Alright, it's been rumored for the last couple of months, but now it's official. The Snyder Cut of Justice League is happening. People have been begging for this ever since Justice League hit theaters. For those of you that don't know, Zack Snyder got fired from Justice League by Geoff, and he hired Joss Whedon in his place. That is one of the dumbest decisions ever, and we can all agree on that because the Justice League movie we got in the end was one of the biggest disappointments in comic book movie history. After years of waiting for a live-action Justice League movie, we finally got one, but it was just a joke. Directed by a guy whose work is literally a joke. Joss Whedon just about got away with the jokes in the first Avengers to me, but Age of Ultron, I don't know what the hell he was on when he made that film. The trailers were all serious and gave off a very dark tone.
There are no strings on me.
And I remember thinking to myself, wow, Joss Whedon is not a walking joke anymore. He is actually growing up. I'm proud of him. But then I paid to go see the movie and...
For God's sake.
It turns out he wasn't growing up. His movies became an even bigger joke than they already were. Whatever talent he had demonstrated for the first Avengers, he had clearly lost all of it with the sequel. And it was at this point that he became one of the worst directors out there for me. And yeah, Joss Whedon came in, threw out pretty much all of the scenes that Zack Snyder had filmed for the movie, rewrote most of Zack Snyder's script, demanded that he be given another $300 million budget from the studio to make the movie, and we got this piece of shit. And the stuff he was gonna do with Batman was unforgivable. Basically, he tried to make Batman's opening fight scene with the Parademon a funny Looney Tunes sequence where Batman is holding onto the Parademon and he bangs into a bunch of objects whilst in mid-air in a funny slapstick kind of way. And it was the studio that saw what he did and told him to get rid of the slapstick because they said you can't treat Batman like that. That's actually one of the only times I am so glad that the studio stepped in and took creative control away from the director, because the director is apparently a moron. I mean, come on, Joss Whedon. I know you love jokes, but even you should know yourself that you don't treat Batman like that. He also doesn't even know what the characters are like, and that is especially obvious here.
Do you really think that...
Oh, wow, they really just vanish. Huh? Oh, that's rude.
Even a kid can tell you that Batman is the only one that just vanishes. The others don't. And by the way, if anyone does just silently vanish, then the Flash would notice it as his senses are heightened due to his super speed. I never thought I'd say this, but thank goodness Geoff got fired from his position with the DCEU, because Joss Whedon is one of the worst possible directors you could have hired for something like this. And before you ask, I know, I was much nicer to Justice League when it came out, and that's mainly because I mostly paid attention to the good stuff. The action was pretty good, I liked that Henry Cavill's Superman was more upbeat like Superman should be, and overall I saw it as dumb fun, but very shortly after my initial Versus video, much like Suicide Squad, I started to notice the big problems. And it was also because Batman vs Superman was just so dark and dull in tone that honestly, you could have given me anything lighter at that point and I would have taken it. Now the Snyder Cut will be available on HBO Max in 2021. It would most likely have come out this year, but due to the pandemic, that won't be happening, as Snyder needs to shoot some additional scenes and he can't do that right now. And apparently, the movie is reportedly being given $20 to $30 million to shoot some additional scenes. One big set piece in particular apparently. And I don't know about this, but I've heard whispers that Shazam will also make an appearance in the film, but I don't know if that's even true. And I kind of don't want it to be true. I mean, Shazam is as opposite from Zack Snyder as you can get, and if Zack makes him all brooding and colorless, well, that will just not work. And the Snyder Cut will be released in 6 3-part episodes. They aren't releasing it as one 3 to 3.5 hour movie, and the reason for this is because they want to keep you subscribed for a lot longer than just a day on their HBO streaming service. Now, there were a lot of naysayers about the Snyder Cut, and even though I was never particularly rooting for it, I never understood why people said it would never happen. The reason for that is because Richard Donner, who directed the first Christopher Reeve Superman, he directed Superman 2, but the studio fired him, and in the end, we still got a Richard Donner cut of the movie, about 30 years later in fact. And I'm not sure if he even got to shoot the whole movie his way, but regardless, we got a Richard Donner cut, and the Snyder Cut to me was the same thing. Whether Zack Snyder got to shoot the whole thing or not, he could still release his cut of the movie. And well, it's happening, so I never got the naysayers in that regard. Now the big question that people are not asking about the Zack Snyder cut is, will the movie be any good in the end? Well, I can't speak for everyone, but from my point of view, I don't see how the movie could be any worse. So I can more or less confidently say that the Snyder Cut will definitely be a better movie than the immature Whedon version. But whether or not it will actually be a good movie, well, it all goes back to my opinion on Zack Snyder as a director. He is a great cinematographer, his movies always look visually impressive, but he is a terrible storyteller. That's where he has the most flaws with his movies in my opinion. And in his last film, Batman vs Superman, he had so many plot points going on, and although a lot of the stuff conceptually was very fascinating, it was not properly fleshed out. Even in his 3-hour extended cut, it's like the movie's aspiration was to be as smart and deep as The Dark Knight, but it failed on every level. And not to mention that The Dark Knight managed to tell its whole story in 2.5 hours, whereas Snyder still struggled to tell his in 3. So will Zack Snyder's Justice League cut be better than Joss Whedon's version? Oh yeah, definitely. But will it be a genuinely good movie? I don't know. I personally don't think much of his previous 2 movies. Man of Steel was average and Batman vs Superman was above average, so going off of that record, I'm guessing that I should at least give his Justice League a 7 out of 10, as currently my score for Joss Whedon's Justice League is a 4 out of 10. Also, the pacing of his extended Batman vs Superman cut does not hold up, and it feels very slow. And I tried to watch it a few months ago, but I couldn't sit through it, so I hope that Justice League is not going to be slow like his other movies. And that also plays into the fact that, like I said, I don't think Zack Snyder is a good storyteller, and his Justice League cut is apparently going to be about 4 to 5 hours. I really hope it moves along at a good pace, so I will definitely give it a watch, and I am certainly interested to see just how much this movie differs from the original, and you know me, it's in my nature. I will definitely be making a versus video between the 2 versions when it comes out, and I really am curious to see just how different it will be. It's definitely going to have a lot of the same scenes from the first couple of trailers for the Snyder version, quite a lot of which did make it into the final movie, so I wonder if those scenes are going to stand out and make us think, oh god, do we have to rewatch these scenes again? Will they stand out too much to us now that we have seen them play out in Joss Whedon's version? Are these scenes tainted now because we have seen them already? And will it feel like a hodgepodge of disconnected scenes when we cut to the new scenes from the Snyder Cut and the older scenes that we got from the official movie? Also, as curious as I am to see it, we have technically been getting so much great stuff from DC lately. We got Wonder Woman, Shazam, and the 2 best movies of the DC universe which have made the most money at the box office, Aquaman and Joker. One is a big epic adventure, and the other is a genuinely smart and intelligent movie, practically an art piece. And I am looking so forward to the next Matt Reeves Batman, which is going to be a noir detective movie with an emotionally tortured Batman who apparently has a deep father-son connection with Alfred. We are getting all of these new things, and the Snyder Cut of Justice League feels like a been there done that kind of situation. And in my opinion, unlike Joker and Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, Zack Snyder makes dark movies in a less intelligent way. Also, I feel like Zack Snyder does not understand these superheroes. Patty Jenkins ultimately shaped Wonder Woman into the character that she was, James Wan made Aquaman the character that he was, so these directors have taken these characters that he pioneered and took them in a different and better direction. Zack Snyder's versions of the characters, however, felt very one-note. And like I said, this will especially be a problem if he decides to include Shazam, as you can't make a character like him dark and broody. What Zack Snyder needs to do is keep the character of Shazam light and upbeat and force him to experience and adapt to this overly dark world. That's what I hope he does, but I don't think he will do it. But here's hoping, because all these new characteristics that these new directors have brought to these characters, Zack Snyder is really going to bring those character traits down, and I don't think that is going to do the characters any favor, especially at this point in the development in their movies. So yeah, I am definitely looking forward to seeing the Snyder Cut, and I am so glad it's happening. But I do have my reservations, especially now that some of these characters have moved on and benefited from changing. There is one thing I am undoubtedly looking forward to, however. The best thing from Zack Snyder's DC movies was his portrayal of Batman. His rules on murdering people aside, I liked the comic book style Batman that he brought on screen. He was literally like a live action comic book. More specifically, he was the Batman from The Dark Knight Returns. And I also hear that the whole Superman arc in Justice League was completely rewritten and reshot by Joss Whedon. Apparently Zack Snyder had something far more different and dark in mind, which I really like the sound of. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it for you, but it heavily involves Darkseid. And Whedon changed it to this quick resolve, and then he gave them garbage dialogue like this.
What was it like? Coming back?
Itchy.
You see what I mean when I say Joss Whedon is an immature filmmaker? He really needs to grow up. I mean, seriously, what the hell kind of dialogue is that? So yeah, I do have my reservations of how Zack Snyder is going to handle these characters, but at the same time, I can't wait to see what his original vision was going to look like. And I hope we don't have to wait too long to see it happen. And who knows, seeing that his Justice League movie is going straight to streaming, maybe that means he doesn't have to adhere to the restrictions of a PG-13 rating. So maybe he can go all out and get an R rating this time. And not that crappy R rating that he got with the extended cut to Batman vs Superman. I'm talking an actual R rating. And judging by the stuff I've heard is going to happen in this movie, that R rating can go a really long way. So comment below with your thoughts on the release of the Snyder Cut, and let me know what you think of my thoughts on the situation. Do you agree with my thoughts and reservations? Or do you not have a problem with Snyder's execution of these characters and stories? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. And before I go, just one more thing. Yeah, you already got your shitty theatrical cut and even worse extended cut. Unlike the Snyder Cut, no one is asking for your longer version of the movie. Neither is Sony for that matter. That's why they're making another Ghostbusters movie without you.
We don't want you here.
And we never wanted you to begin with. So either learn from your past mistakes, or just sit there in self-pity and denial and watch people like us praise genuinely good female characters like Ahsoka, Wonder Woman and Black Widow and so on and so forth, whilst you just sit there feeling sorry for yourself. So, with that said, thank you very much as always for watching, guys, and I will see all of you with a review of a TV show involving one of the Justice League cast members very soon. Take care.